All right, everybody, get ready, because today's deep dive is a wild one. We're taking a look at Homo erectus by Slava Galan. And let me tell you, this is not your typical anthropology book.
It's definitely a different take on human evolution.
That's putting it mildly. It's like he took anthropology, threw in a dash of stand-up comedy, and then mixed it all up with, like, a prehistoric rom-com.
He's got this satirical, cynical style, but it's seriously funny.
Right. So our mission today is to sift through the laughs and see what insights we can glean about men, women, and why we seem to drive each other crazy. All through the lens of Slava Galan's, shall we say, unique sense of humor.
Oh, absolutely. Buckle up. He doesn't hold back. Right off the bat, he tackles the whole why humans walk upright thing. And his theory...
Well, please, you have to tell me he didn't.
Oh, he did. He suggests that men stood up so they could, and I quote, ogle women's rear ends face to face.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe he actually wrote that.
And it gets better. He even compares breasts to, well, let's just say he makes a very bold anatomical comparison.
Okay, I am both horrified and strangely intrigued right now. But, you know, even though it's outrageous, it kind of has a point. I mean, physical attraction is a powerful force, right?
Absolutely. Don't forget, we're talking about evolution here. For early humans, certain physical features signaled things like fertility and health, which were crucial for survival.
So it's like we're laughing at the absurdity of it, but then we realize he might actually be onto something about how our brains are wired.
Right. That's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're taking these seemingly outlandish observations and realizing they connect to something fundamental about being human.
Exactly. And speaking of fundamental, Slava Galan doesn't just stop at physical attraction. He also dives into how our brains evolved. And get this, he links it to our ancestors becoming hunters.
And that's actually a widely accepted theory. The development of bigger brains, walking upright, it all ties back to that hunter-gatherer lifestyle.
Wait, really? So how does he explain that connection? Because I thought bigger brains were all about, like, using tools and stuff.
Well, it's more about the energy required to have a bigger brain. Scientists call it the expensive tissue hypothesis. Basically, brains are energy hogs. A bigger brain needs a lot of calories to function. And guess what provided those calories? That's right, hunting.
Wow, I never thought of it like that, but it makes perfect sense. So our ancestors start hunting, they need bigger brains to be successful, and that leads to everything.
Exactly. More complex social structures, the ability to plan for the future, and eventually the foundation for the relationships we have today.
It's amazing to think that our love lives today are somehow connected to how our ancestors hunted for food thousands of years ago.
It really is. And he uses this great analogy with Humphrey Bogart, of all people.
Hold on. Is Humphrey Bogart like a recurring character in this book about early humans?
It's more like Slava Galan uses him to comment on the absurdity of it all. You can practically hear Bogart saying, here's looking at you, evolution.
That's hilarious. Okay, so we've got early humans, evolving brains, a dash of Bogart. This is already a wild ride. But if we're really just driven by these primal instincts, how does that play out in the complexities of modern relationships? Because last time I checked, dragging someone by their hair back to your cave isn't exactly a recipe for a healthy partnership.
You're definitely right about that. And that's where Slava Galan's humor really shines. He takes those caveman cliches and puts them in a modern context to show how those instincts still influence us.
Okay, I need an example. What kind of caveman cliches are we talking about?
Well, he spends a lot of time talking about what men think about. Or rather, what they don't think about.
You mean the whole, what do you think about nothing debacle?
That's the one.
Oh, man. Don't even get me started. That's like a universal trigger for suspicion.
Mm.
Seriously, though, nothing. Come on, guys. But Slava Galan takes it even further, saying men are practically ruled by their lower brains. You know, those primal instinct centers.
He definitely plays up that whole caveman thing for laughs. But honestly, there's some truth to it. Neuroscience has shown that men, on average, tend to have more activity in the amygdala, that's the part of the brain associated with those basic instincts like fear and aggression.
Oh, so it's like men aren't incapable of complex thought. It's just that their brains might prioritize things a little differently.
Exactly. It's not just about emotions either. Think about spatial reasoning, problem solving. Research suggests men, on average, might excel in those areas because their brains are wired for spatial awareness.
Huh. from back in the hunter-gatherer days, right? Like tracking prey, navigating terrain.
Exactly. Skills that require those strong spatial abilities.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. But hold on. If men are all about spatial reasoning and lower brain impulses, what's Slava Galan's take on the female brain?
Well, he's completely fascinated by what he calls women's intuition.
Ah, yes. The infamous sixth sense.
Right. That almost uncanny ability to read between the lines, pick up on those subtle cues that most men completely miss. He suggests it was honed over millennia as women evolved to be these incredibly perceptive caregivers and social navigators.
So while men were out there bringing down the mammoths, women were building complex social structures and communication styles within their groups.
Exactly. Think about their evolutionary role, raising children, but also maintaining social harmony within the tribe, forging alliances, mediating disputes.
Wow, it sounds exhausting.
It was demanding, for sure. Those roles really favored anyone who could accurately read emotions, anticipate needs, understand complex social dynamics.
So basically, being socially savvy was just as important as knowing how to, like, build a fire or hunt.
Exactly. Makes you wonder if some of those hunches people talk about are really just echoes of ancient survival instincts.
It's a really interesting thought.
Yeah.
It also makes you wonder if those differences in how our brains work are part of the reason men and women sometimes have a hard time understanding each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not about one way of processing information being better, just that recognizing those differences can help us navigate those communication hurdles with a little more empathy.
For sure. So maybe the key is to appreciate the unique strengths each person brings to the table, rather than getting caught up in those prehistoric instincts.
Now, that's a thought-provoking takeaway. And since we're on the topic of navigating tricky terrain, Slava Galan doesn't hold back on modern dating. Get ready for some serious laughs.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked brains, instincts, the whole shebang. But how does all this actually play out in the modern dating world?
Well, Slava Galan would probably say that the dating world is a jungle, literally. He compares modern dating rituals to those elaborate mating dances you see in the animal kingdom, like those over-the-top first dates, the extravagant gifts. He says they're basically our version of a peacock flashing its feathers.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. We've just traded in our clubs and animal skins for roses and fancy dinners. But it's still all about impressing a potential mate.
Exactly. He's hilarious, but he also goes deeper than just the superficial stuff. He talks about those core desires men and women are looking for in a partner. Like with men, he spends a lot of time on that provider instinct.
The drive to provide and protect, right?
Yes. He links it all the way back to our hunter-gatherer days, where a man's ability to provide was essential for survival.
It's funny, that instinct still seems to be around, even though women are independent and successful on their own.
I know, right?
How many times have you heard a woman say she wants someone ambitious or driven? It's like that ancient script is still playing out in our subconscious.
Absolutely. And it goes both ways. He
Right.
talks about how women, shaped by their role as caregivers, are often drawn to partners who show empathy, emotional intelligence, those nurturing qualities.
It's like no matter how much our culture changes, those deep-seated, hardwired needs still influence us. It's fascinating, but also a little bit intimidating. Like, are we really just slaves to our prehistoric programming?
It's definitely a thought-provoking question. But I think that's what I enjoy most about Slava Galan's book. He's not afraid to ask the uncomfortable questions, but he does it with so much wit and humor that you can't help but laugh at ourselves and the whole situation.
He definitely finds the humor in human nature. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Homo erectus, what's the most important thing you hope our listeners take away from this?
That's a good question. I think the biggest takeaway is understanding that our evolutionary past can actually give us more empathy and compassion for ourselves and our partners.
Oh, I like that.
It's like we're all just walking around with these ancient brains trying to figure out this crazy modern world together.
That's a great way to put it. Those little arguments, those communication breakdowns, maybe it's not about who's right or wrong. It's just those ancient instincts clashing in a modern setting.
Exactly. So instead of trying to change each other, maybe it's about recognizing those differences, appreciating each other's strengths, and navigating those challenges with a sense of humor. And maybe a little patience, too.
I love that. We've come a long way since those cave-dwelling days, but we're all still a work in progress, right?
Absolutely. Evolution is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. A huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into Homo erectus. We hope you enjoyed this wild ride through love, evolution, and everything in between. And if you're looking for more laughs and insights, be sure to check out Juanislava Galan's book. Until next time, keep exploring, keep laughing, and remember, it's all part of being human.